Hi, this is Brian Noyes. In this last module, we're going to look into the validation mechanisms of data bindings and how you can use it to provide validation indications to a user when they put in bad data. First, we're going to talk about the simplest mechanism to use, which is to throw an exception when you get bad data and to turn on a flag on the binding to have it give validation indications based on that. After that, we'll look at a built-in mechanism in WPF called validation rules. Validation rules are objects that you implement that encapsulate a rule and get evaluated by a binding when you hook it up to it. If that rule returns an error, then you'll get an error indication on the screen. Next, we'll look at an interface that's been around since .NET 1.0 called iDataErrorInfo, which is a standard mechanism for indicating validation errors in combination with data binding. When you use iDataErrorInfo, the object that you're binding to implements this interface, and it will be queried for errors after the properties are set. Next, we'll look at iNotifyDataErrorInfo, which was added in .NET 4.5 and supports asynchronous validation. It's very similar to iDataErrorInfo, which is a synchronous API, but it supports the notion that you may need to make an asynchronous call to something like a service to determine whether an input value is valid or not. And then once you get the results back, then you want to provide the invalid indication. Next, we'll talk briefly about some binding events that are available that can be handy in dealing with validation and other scenarios as well. We'll talk about how you can customize the validation indications that the built-in controls use for presenting validation errors, and how you can provide things like tooltips with the error strings in them. And then we'll finish off this module by talking about data annotations, which are a standard mechanism in .NET for indicating the validation rules associated with the property through attributes.